A Somali refugee who violently raped 2 women has been spared prison time by a judge in Utah. Fox reporter Alicia Kuna has more on that story. Alicia?
Hi, Tucker. Yeah, Muhammad Ali Mohammed, a refugee from Somalia, was in the United States for less than a year when in the summer of 2011, he admits he raped 2 women in Salt Lake City. He was just 14 at the time when one night he says he sexually assaulted a woman at knife point outside her home. And the next night broke into another woman's home, raped her, then forced her to go to an ATM to withdraw $400 for him to spend on clothes for his first day in the 9th grade. A surveillance camera helped investigators track him down. He was charged with first-degree felony rape, second-degree felony forcible sexual abuse, and kidnapping. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a juvenile detention center. His family testified that while in the Somali refugee camp, he witnessed his own brother's murder and was sexually assaulted himself. Now, after serving 6 years, Ali Mohammed is about to turn 21. He's aging out of the juvie system and is eligible to continue serving time as an adult at the Utah State Prison. Instead, Judge Vernice Treese of the 3rd District Court in Utah sentenced him to 5 years probation, telling Ali Mohammed that she wouldn't bat an eye to send him to prison if he violates his probation. In court, Ali Mohammed told Judge Treese that, quote, "I was a monster. I didn't know what I was thinking. I was a very stupid kid." But Tucker, one of his victims, before the sentencing of probation, told the judge that she was terrified at the thought of this man being out on the streets again. Some of the volunteers who worked at the detention center, say they believe that this man has turned himself around, but the victims are very concerned. Tucker.
Alicia, thank you. Well, in case you missed it over the weekend, there was a fascinating piece in Politico with the following counterintuitive title: "America is running out of Muslim clerics, and that's dangerous." According to the article, the administration's travel ban, the supposedly fascist one that affects just 6 out of dozens of majority Muslim countries, is causing a perilous shortage of Islamic clergy in this country. That is terrifying, explains Politico, because, quote, "with no imam to guide them, Muslims could soon turn elsewhere for direction with possibly radical consequences." It's kind of a weird thing to say when you think about it. We've been told for years that Islamic extremists are just a tiny minority within Islam. Foreign Muslims, our leaders have assured us again and again, are no more dangerous than native-born Americans. Probably less dangerous, actually, because native-born Americans are horrible, as they often point out. And yet, according to Politico, young Muslims may spontaneously become violent if they don't get the right kind of imams, even though their faith and culture have nothing to do with violence. Well, it's funny how you never hear the same reasoning applied to other faiths. There is, by the way, a shortage of Episcopal priests in this country. Have you noticed a wave of Episcopalianism terrorism? Has Chuck Schumer demanded we import more Buddhist monks just to make sure young Buddhists don't murder the rest of us? Probably not. Instead, they're telling us what they've always told us: it's completely safe to admit more Muslims into America, and bigoted even to question that assumption. And by the way, if you do question it, Muslim extremists might kill you. Well, pro-illegal immigrant activists are mounting a year-end offensive, pressuring Congress to grant amnesty to DACA recipients. It's been close to 3 months since the Trump administration announced it was ending DACA. That's the Obama-era program that grants work permits to hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. There's been talk of a deal, but so far one has not appeared. Ali Noorani is executive director of the National Immigration Forum, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Noorani, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tucker.
So I think there are 2 sides to this argument, for sure, actually. I think it's a complicated one. But I also wonder about the priority it's been given. So there are tens of thousands of people living on the street in America. The middle class is actually dying younger than it used to. We've got millions of Americans addicted to drugs. Why is the fate of DACA recipients #1 on the congressional agenda? And both sides seem to think it is. I'm a little confused by that.
Well, that's a really good question, Tucker. And you know what? The way I look at this is that historic presidents are the presidents that surprise you. And President Trump has this incredible opportunity to surprise us in that he can improve our national security, grow our economy, and fix a slice of the immigration system, and be the first president in decades to do so. Presidents Bush and Obama were completely unable to do so. So for President Trump to lean in on Democrats and force them to the table on border security measures, ensuring that DACA recipients are passing criminal background checks, but then also along the way continuing to grow our economy, because these are young people who are contributing to various parts of our economy, but then ultimately making sure that these young people are owning the American dream. And the best part about it, Tucker, is that by doing this, President Trump is meeting the needs of 79% of Republican voters and realigning the party for Latino voters overall. And I got to say, that's a pretty historic move.
Yeah, well, he already actually surprised, I think, a lot of people already by winning the presidency, and he did so by running on a platform of building a wall along our southern border and deporting people here illegally. Why not just do that? It's what he promised to do. It's how he got elected president. I mean, you just said he should be acting according to his promises. Would you be excited for him to do that?
Well, you remember on September 5th of this year, when he sunsetted the DACA program, President Trump said that he wanted a solution that said, quote, makes everybody happy. So let's make sure that we can make sure that those DACA recipients are able to be protected from deportation and continue to contribute to our economy.
But wait a second.
In terms of border security, that's your question, right? We believe we need smart border security. So let's spend billions of dollars on the border where the majority of drugs, guns, and money are being smuggled. You know where that is? Ports of entry. Let's improve the infrastructure. Let's get boots on the ground there.
You know what? I don't believe you. We've been talking about this for decades, and it's all a lie. The point is to grant a pathway to citizenship to the people who are here legally. And my question has always been, isn't there already a pathway to citizenship? It's U.S. embassies around the world grant 1 million green cards to people. Why shouldn't everyone here illegally go get in line with everybody else who wants to become a citizen and do that? I've never really understood why we wouldn't ask that of people.
You know, that's another great question, because that's why Congress needs to come together as Republicans and Democrats to create an immigration system that meets the needs of American workers and their families. Right now, our immigration system does not do that. We've got talent going overseas. We've got jobs going overseas where that talent is stuck outside of the country.
That's just, look, the cities with, you know, pick one, Lowell, Massachusetts, Lewiston, Maine. Cities are flooded with immigrants, have high unemployment and tons of poverty. That's not axiomatic that the more immigrants you have, the richer you are. That's just not true. But you're not answering my question, which is why is an American living in a country in economic decline where people are making less than their parents and they know it, should granting amnesty and citizenship to people here legally be number one on my priority list? That's my only question. Why should your average American think that's the most important thing?
I'm going to be the first person to say that the immigration system needs to serve the needs of the American worker and their families. So let's pick a place. Let's look at southern Idaho. Unemployment rate of 3%. Third largest dairy industry in the nation. The only way that dairy industry continues to grow is if they have an immigrant workforce that is creating jobs for Idahoans who have been there for generations. That's the kind of balance that we're looking for here, Tucker.
Yeah. You'd have to explain the economics of California, which has actually carried out this experiment for the last 30 years and now has more poverty than any state, to convince me of it. But nice try. Alec, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
So today there is a new religious freedom battle brewing. The Catholic Church in D.C. just sued the D.C. Metro system for rejecting their advertisement, which they paid for and wanted to put on the sides of buses. It features men under a starry night and a simple slogan, "Find the perfect gift," directing folks to a website. A transit authority spokesperson says the ad in question was declined because it is prohibited by the transit folks in their current advertising guidelines. So is that a valid argument? Here now, and here we go again, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. You know, it's always interesting to look at the arguments made in these cases. It's really freedom of speech versus freedom of religion, essentially, right?
It is, and the transits had a long and checkered history with regard to censoring certain messages, you know, and they adopted what they said was a content-neutral system of rules in 2015 after losing a series of cases where they decided to pick and choose between different messages. This is little better. There are no guidelines showing how they choose between these. They talk about barring viewpoints on which there are differing opinions. I mean, there's differing opinions between 1% and 2% milk. I mean, it's hard to, you know, have that as a standard. And so you have an assortment of people in groups like the Catholic Church, conservative, Ianopoulos. They took his book advertisement off and just showed his picture and a book, but they sell other books. Yeah. And so there's someone sitting there at transit like Caesar saying, you know, crucifixion, freedom, and it's not working.
It's interesting because the church's argument, if you put up the picture back up again, guys, so people can see it at home, are saying, you know, it's not an overly religious Catholic message. It's just sort of a spiritual message, you know, find the perfect gift. And they make the comparison to a yoga ad. you know, that promises you a higher form of spirituality. And I think about the atheist billboards that I go by on my way into New York every Christmas time, which basically are like, Christmas is a hoax, you know?
Right.
So, you know, where do you draw the line?
Well, I'm in favor of banning yoga. My wife has been trying to get me to do that for years, so that should be banned. But the one solution is not to draw a line. You know, I'm an old free speech nut. In my view, the solution to bad speech is more speech. This whole problem started because people couldn't tolerate opposing views. You had pro-Israel ads and pro-Palestinian ads, and both groups said we wanted the other group taken down. One approach is to say we're going to let viewpoints be spoken and they'll be heard, and we're not going to choose between them. But instead, what they did is they said, look, we really want people that are saying things for a commercial purpose. So if you say something and you're selling something, it's okay. If you say something because you want to help the public, you're banned.
Well, I'm a free speech nut is a good T-shirt to wear to yoga class. Jonathan Turley, thank you very much.
Thank you.